Okay, well, thanks for stopping by.
Good morning, everyone. I invite us to start the day by bringing ourselves to the present moment and just taking a moment to straighten up, relax the shoulders and jaw, and feel rest. Just find rest somewhere in your body. Maybe it's in the exhale, each exhale. Just let go of anything that would distract you from this sacred time together today. Resting the body, resting the mind, so that indeed we are open and receptive to the living spirit of truth. And in this restful state, I invite you to shift to feel good. You may remember that from a few weeks ago, that technique where we take a moment to just feel good. Switch to feel good if you can, or just put a little smile on your face. And notice that feel good tone. And if you need a little bit more prompting, I'll share a couple of jokes with you. You can open your eyes, and some of you may remember George Carlin, and he said, "I put $1 in a change machine. Nothing changed." And then how about this one on change? How many conspiracy theorists does it take to change a light bulb? The real question is, who broke the light bulb and why are they keeping us in the dark? So hopefully you have some good feelings right now as I welcome you to Unity Santa Fe, where we support, nourish, and inspire one another to remember and remind each other of our oneness and divinity. And I'm thrilled today that Reverend Robert Brumet's message, The Paradox of Change, will support you in seeing what we least want is the doorway to what we want the most. And this is the first of a 6-part series based on Robert's book, Finding Yourself in Transition, which is also the focus of our spring soul circles. And I know to the extent we embrace this message, we are more fully living our vision and mission statements, which I invite you to affirm together. Unity Santa Fe is a welcoming interspiritual community that celebrates the oneness and divinity of all creation. Our mission is to raise consciousness, transform lives, heal the planet, one person at a time, beginning with me. And our Unity Santa Fe core values are God first, awareness, joy, love, appreciation, and humble surrender. So I invite us to take a moment to really catch a vision of what our life looks like when we put feet on that vision, mission, and core values. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like when we are congruent, totally congruent with this vision, mission, and core values? And I celebrate the wisdom, the joy, and the enthusiasm of doing just that in everything we think, say, and do, where the rubber meets the road. And so it is.
Good morning. Let's begin by ensuring our microphones are muted and affirming together our prayer for all creation. Together. Surely the presence is in this place, and in all places, and in all creation. Knowing and accepting this, we behold the divine presence in all creation throughout the world without exception. Knowing that there are many paths to God, many names for God, many faces of God, but only one God, and God is expressing as all creation in all ways, always. In this knowing, we come together this morning to experience and express our oneness and divinity. And for the wisdom to live this daily in everything we think, say, and do, we say thank you, Divine Creator, that it is so, and so it is.
Well, I invite you to take a moment to either bless the offering you've already sent, write the check you would have written in the sanctuary, or click on the give link that Tanya is posting in the chat box now. This link goes straight to our homepage where you can click the give button and electronically send your gift. And whether you mail a check, give through online banking, or give on our webpage, this is your opportunity to give as source of Unity Santa Fe, which is a source of your and other spiritual nourishment. And just take a moment to see yourself going to the altar in our sanctuary with your prayer slip and gift. Feel the joy of giving as you light a virtual candle to remember you are the light of the world, as you place it in a virtual bed of salt to remember you are the salt of the earth, and as you place your gift in a virtual basket on the altar. As Catherine blesses us with, as I give.
As I give, so do I receive, joyfully, gratefully. As I give, so do I receive, fully, freely. God is a river where abundance flows. Stepping into it, I accept and know as I give, so do I receive. As I give, so do I receive, offering my first and best. As I give, so do I receive, knowing how I've been blessed. God is a river where abundance flows. Stepping into it, I accept and know as I give, so do I receive. As I give, so do I receive, back to where my soul is fed. As I give, so do I receive. Thank you for my daily bread. God is a river where abundance flows. Stepping into it, I accept and know as I give, so do I receive. As I give, so do I receive.
And thank you, dear Catherine and Christy Rickardson, for that wonderful song. I invite you to feel that joy, feel that gratitude, feel that generosity. Allow it to permeate every cell and atom of your body, your heart, your soul, your mind, as you radiate it out beyond the body, creating an energetic field of gratitude, joy, and generosity that is like a magnet, attracting more and more to you to be grateful for, joyful about, and generous with. And so it is. Amen. And so now I'm delighted to welcome Bill Brooks as our special music today. We always love it. And he used to be live from New York, and now he's live from Albuquerque.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here. Once more knocking on a locked door, wondering why I try for anything at all. Ran hard, worked it with my whole heart, reaching for that last part. Once again I fall. I've never had an easy climb. Still, it's up to me to decide. I will carry on. I will carry on. Hope is never gone, and hope is never wrong. It's time to take the leap beyond what I can see. Here I go again. One deep breath and then I will carry on. Once more crashing through that closed door. Won't sit still, not anymore. This is my time. Which way am I headed today? I don't care what they say. Decision is mine. I may not have an easy climb. I've made up my mind. I will carry on. I will carry on. Hope is never gone, and hope is never wrong. It's time to take the leap beyond what I can see. Here I go again. One deep breath and then I will carry on. The world will say give up, but I will not give up, 'cause this is what I've always dreamed of. So if it takes a lifetime, well, that's how long I'll wait until I see the day. 'Cause I will carry on. I will carry on. Hope is never gone, and hope is never wrong. It's time to take the leap beyond what I can see. Here I go again. One deep breath and then I will carry on.
So I am delighted to introduce you to Unity Minister Reverend Robert Brumet, whose book, Finding Yourself in Transition, is the basis for this 6-week Sunday message series and our spring soul circles. Robert has been my spiritual director since May 2017, and his spiritual companionship has blessed my life and prepared me for what may be the biggest transition of my life. Certainly the biggest transition since the transition in which I became the spiritual leader of Unity Santa Fe on September 1st, 1994. Robert's been with me over the years while I have sat in the question of when will I retire? And his companionship in that process has meant so much to me. In my experience, Robert is a brilliant Unity minister, spiritual director, writer, and insight meditation teacher. And truly, this is an opportunity for all of us to sit at the feet of a master who is a spiritual companion and mentor to many, many Unity ministers and students. And for more information about Robert and his mindfulness ministries, you can see our newsletter. And I guess the last thing I want to say is that I was so delighted to share the stage with Robert in 2012 when I received the Myrtle Fillmore Award by Unity Worldwide Ministries. Robert received Unity Worldwide Ministries Light of God Expressing Award for outstanding service to the Unity movement. So please help me welcome Robert Brumet.
Thank you so much, Brendolyn. I really appreciate your words, your kind words, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share with your group. So, hi, everybody, and I must admit, sometimes I'm a little bit jealous of you folks living in Santa Fe or living in that area, because that's one of my favorite places to visit when I'm traveling physically and not just zooming around the the countryside. I was virtually in Cleveland about 30 minutes ago, through 45 minutes ago. So it's an interesting world that we live in. It's a very different world, and I'm grateful to be part of your ministry and watch its growth and its change, as well as the growth and change in you, the leader. So thank you once again. I want to begin with a quote. It's a quote that you may have heard somewhere. It's a quote by Heraclitus, who was a Greek philosopher some 2,000 years ago, I believe. And Heraclitus said many wonderful and insightful things. One of them is that the only thing that is for certain is change. So that's kind of an irony. The only thing that doesn't change is change. And I would guess, if possible, to be more true in one era than another, I would think that if Heraclitus were alive today, visiting our world today, he would say, "I told you so," because change is happening in ways that are mind-boggling. I'd like to just take an excerpt from a book by Ray Kurzweil, who's a futurist. He's not a metaphysical or what we might call spiritual person in the way we define it, but he is very much in tune with what's going on in the world, and very insightful. He says, I quote, in his book, The Law of Accelerating Returns, he says, an analysis of the history of technology shows that technological change is exponential, meaning contrary to the common sense linear view. So we won't experience 100 years of progress in the 21st century. It will be more like 20,000 years of progress at today's rate. The returns, such as speed and cost effectiveness, also increase exponentially. And there's even exponential growth in the rate of exponential growth. Within a few decades, machine intelligence will surpass human intelligence, leading to the singularity, that is, where technological change is so rapid and profound, it represents a rupture in the fabric of human history. So he's referring to technological change because that's the audience he speaks to. But I would say in terms of the spiritual community, those of us that are seeking and committed to our awakening and our spiritual growth, that what Kurzweil would say, I would say yes, and much, much more. That there's so many changes taking place around us, not only in technology, but in the way we live, or the way we relate to one another, our identity as human beings, our identity as male and female, black and white, and every dichotomy you can think of is being rubbed up against, and you can feel the heat and the friction of that apparent conflict. So given all the changes around us, it's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And yet at the same time, there are even bigger changes, and I think more rapid changes taking place within us. I believe that we're on the cusp of a transformation that's wider and deeper and more powerful than any of us can imagine. Now, what that transformation looks like, there's no way of knowing. When it occurs, we could say it's occurring right now and will continue to occur. It's not a point in time. It's an era, if you will. And yet, in spite of all of this mind-boggling, soul-wrenching change, very few of us really have been taught how to deal with change in a healthy, effective way. I know certainly I was not, and I have yet to meet anyone in my many, many seminars and workshops that I've given. I've yet to meet anyone that says I was educated and prepared for change, because we live in a culture, or we have lived in a culture, that says that change is not okay. Certainly in my family system, change was seen as the enemy. So you did everything you can to resist change. And why is change so difficult? Well, it puts us in touch with what we fear the most. What we fear the most is the unknown. The unknown is very scary. You know, right from little children afraid of the dark to adults not knowing what the future holds, what tomorrow brings. It's scary, and there's a very good reason why it's frightening to us. And I'm not saying that the fear is the answer, but it is a symptom when we don't have the answer and we don't feel grounded in that which is beyond the constant change. Our brain evolved in the body, as part of the body, as a mechanism to help us survive. The brain is a mechanism to help us as human beings survive, and it's really done quite well. I mean, here we are. And for better or worse, we've changed the landscape of this planet enormously, and we have become by far the dominant species. So we haven't needed to rely upon instinct, as most animals do. When seasons change or things change, animals instinctually will hibernate or fly south, or they grow thicker fur and thicker coats, or whatever. Each species has a different way of adapting to change in weather and change in the environment. But with human beings, we don't have that instinct, and we don't have that built into our biology, because, you know, our biology is physically, we are fairly weak and vulnerable compared to most animals. I mean, you know, most of us would not survive a couple of nights in the woods, at least not in certain parts of this country. Yet animals thrive in that place. Our brain is what we've learned to rely upon for our survival. And we become identified with the thought process and the intellectual process of the brain because it's so valuable. But the problem is it can't take us to what's real. The brain, the human mind all alone cannot take us to what's real. So we're finding that the world is changing and the old brain maps that we've been using aren't working anymore. We find that the very system that has kept us dominant and alive and thriving, for the most part, on this planet, it does not have the answers for what's coming next because it's not programmed for it. We haven't had the experience. For example, I'll just do a metaphor. Let's imagine you're taking a beautiful trip in New Mexico, there's a lot of wonderful places in New Mexico. I'm sure you know that more than I do, but I love your state. I love the area where you live. So let's say I'm taking a drive, and this is before GPS. So I'm taking a drive and I'm driving around and I get lost, which I've done when I'm in New Mexico. But no problem, you know, in the old days, we pull over to the map, over to the side of the road, and we grab our map. We pull the Rand McNally out of the glove box. We open it up and look at the map. We see where we are, we see where we want to go and realize where we made the wrong turn. So then we go back and get back on the path again. Well, that simple little metaphor is the way the brain works all the time. We have maps internalized in our brain, and those maps tell us this is how to survive. This is what you do to survive. This is what you do to be safe. This is what you do to be loved. And we're our culture, our family systems, all that has occurred in our early life in particular creates this map. And using this map is how we survive. So imagine, going back to the metaphor, imagine that you're driving again, and once again you get lost, and you're not terribly concerned because you have your wonderful map of New Mexico. But for some reason, I can't find myself on this map. I can't see where I am. And I realize that I've driven off the map. I'm in the state of Arizona. And I don't have any maps for Arizona. So what do I do? Well, if you're like most people, you will continue to use the map of New Mexico, even though you're in Arizona. In other words, we revert back to our old maps, even when they don't work, because it's better to hold on to something that's difficult than to let it go and feel the vulnerability and the absolute terror sometimes of living fully without any map. I don't know who I am. I don't know who you are. I don't know what the world is, you see. So we're at that place for many of us. And that creates, or generates, I should say, a great deal of fear. So at this point, we have a perfect depiction of what's going on in human history, because the human history mirrors our own life experience. And in our life experience of every human being, there's a tension. One polarity says we have to maintain who we are. I have to be who I am. I don't know anything else. I have to protect this body by this brain. I don't know what else to do. That's the way I'm programmed. So that's called the self-preservation instinct, or the desire to survive, not only physically, but survive in terms of our self-image, in terms of our ego. I want my ego to survive, even though I say I surrender and so forth to the divine will. But there's a subtext there that says, but, I still want to be in control. As Stephen Levine would sometimes say, the ego wants to deliver its own eulogy. So it's like we think we want to grow, but we're in a sense afraid to. In a Christian community, they sometimes say everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. And I could reword that and say, in unity language, everybody wants to transform and become one with the divine, but nobody wants to let go of the ego to do that. We want to take the ego with us so that we can be present at our own funeral. And as you know, it doesn't work that way. So to go beyond who we have been and to become more than who we have been and more than who we are now, or who we believe ourselves to be, we must be willing to face the fear of the unknown. So the whole question then is, what do I do with fear? And that's a question that animals don't have. And a lot of people believe they don't have. That because I feel fear, there must be something dangerous in my environment. That's the way I'm programmed. So I run away from change. I stay small, because to be big means I'm traveling beyond the map. And beyond the map, I don't know how to survive. So, the thing we fear most, Marianne Williams' quote of our biggest fear is not of failure, but our biggest fear is of being successful beyond our imagination, being bigger than we can even imagine. That's very frightening. And yet, given all of this energy around holding on to our identity, there is an equally powerful and perhaps more powerful drive within us. And that is the drive to become all that we're capable of being. And that's why you and I are involved in unity and in other spiritual paths and journeys, perhaps, because we want to prepare ourselves to be bigger than we've ever been before. But this becoming bigger than we've ever been before is scary, because it's taking me outside my map. I want to be big, but I still want to hold on to my identity. and it doesn't work. And so there's this tension. We can see that in human history. Human history is the energy of expanding and becoming more versus the energy of regressing back to the old self. We're seeing that at work in our country today. You know, we're seeing those that are very concerned with maintaining our identity, or their identity, I should say, their description of who they are, vis-a-vis the world that's changing very rapidly all around us. So fear will happen, but we have the ability to look at that fear and say, what do I want to do with it? I don't have to act it out. I don't have to believe there's something dangerous just because I'm feeling anxious. So I can explore the fear. What's it about? How do I feel fear when I feel myself going beyond the edge of my comfort zone? So I'd like to close with a story I have of my experience just when I was a little kid. I learned quite a bit from it, even though at the time I didn't know that I did. So the solution to feel fear is to feel the fear and just walk through it. And when I was a child, we lived in Toledo, Ohio, and I lived in a neighborhood that was just about a block from a city park. And in the city park, there was a swimming pool. And that swimming pool had a diving board. It was just one diving board, and it was the kind of a low standard diving board. And I used to love to jump off of it. And I was just learning how to dive and do flips and turns. And one year, the city put in a high diving board that was so high. I mean, when you're 10 years old, I really looked like it was up in the clouds somewhere, you know. You couldn't even see the top of it. And when I saw that diving board, I had two very powerful feelings. One was I had to go off that diving board. I had to. The other one was the absolute terror of going off of that diving board. And perhaps you can relate to that in your own life in various ways, of this feeling of, I've got to do it, but boy, it just scares the heck out of me. So that's what I went through. And I went through this period of walking up to the ladder and then walking away. Then I would take a few steps up the ladder and I'd come back down. Sometimes I'd even be out on the diving board and I have to turn around. I mean, it was embarrassing, but I figured it was easier to be embarrassed than to be dead. So I decided I was going to survive. And then one day I was out on the end of the diving board, and once again, I could, looking way down, seemed like 100 feet below the little pool that I was diving into. And I said, no, I can't do it. I was shaking. So I turned around and all of a sudden my heart sank. Because there, right behind me, unbeknownst to me, was Sonny Aarons. Sonny Aarons was the meanest, ugliest, baddest bully in the neighborhood. And he loved where he was at this time. He looked at me with an evil grin and he says, Brumet, I ain't moving. You are. So there I was between the devil and the deep blue sea, so to speak. So I thought, well, I have no choice but to jump. And I did. And being a good Catholic, I crossed myself and I said prayers. And then on the way down to the pool, I flipped end over end and wound up hitting the water in an awful belly flop. Ouch. And then I went down and down and down, tumbling head over heel, all the way down to the bottom of the pool. And I had just surrendered and assumed that I was going to die. It was so painful and so scary to be at the bottom, 10 feet down, the bottom of that pool. And yet something started happening. I started to come up and up and up and up and up. And I came up so fast that half my body shot out of the water. I looked around and I said, wow, that was so much fun. And I couldn't wait to get to the side of the pool so I could climb that ladder back to the top of the diving board. I loved it. And yet at the same time, all of the fear did not go away. Most of it did, but there was still some fear there. I could feel my body closing. And each time I would jump, I could still feel a little bit of fear. And what I began to realize was that fear and excitement were really the same energy. The energy was shifting from fear to excitement, because both of them are a response to going beyond ourselves, going beyond the map that we have. We're excited about it, and it scares the bejabbers out of us. So there we are. But we can choose, which one do I want to listen to? And as we do that, we begin to see that the unknown becomes exciting, not just scary. It may be scary at first, but it's like, wow. What we fear the most gives us the greatest opportunity for freedom to become bigger and bigger. And so life is calling us to become bigger. Evolution is calling us to become bigger. And most of us, we consciously have the desire to become more. Not everybody does, but many of us do. And so those of us that do, we feel that pressure between going beyond and holding on to the old. So one way to convert that fear into excitement is to just welcome the fear, to allow it to be there, and recognize that fear is potential excitement. Faith is not having no fear. To be fearless doesn't mean having no fear. It means feeling the fear and just walking through it. Feeling the fear and walking through it. Honoring the fear in the sense that sometimes we need to hold on to the old. Maybe we're just not ready at this time. And that may be a wise decision to say, not now. I'm not going off that diving board right now. I'm not ready. But also just keep looking at the fear and recognizing, seeing fear for what it is, an opportunity to become bigger than we can imagine. So I'll close with this quote from Illusions. That's a book that was written back in the 70s and was very influential to me and perhaps to many of you. Richard Bach wrote Illusions, and one of the memorable quotes in that book is as follows: "The mark of our ignorance is the depth of our belief in injustice and tragedy." The mark of our ignorance is the depth of our belief in injustice and tragedy. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. So in one sense, it is the end of the world. It is perhaps the end of our old world, our old way of being. And we're being pushed off the diving board, so to speak. But believe me, scary as it is, it can also be very exciting and exhilarating and full of life. So I will close by wishing you well, thanking you for the opportunity to be here. Let's just go into a period of silence for a few minutes. Just feeling where you are with this experience. Noticing any fear, noticing any excitement, noticing whatever you feel, being aware of it. And if there's any discomfort, physical or emotional, those are the areas where we're still kind of holding on to the diving board or the ladder. We're holding on to the past, and that's okay. Just recognize that life is moving on. And as we relax our grip, as we take a deep breath, as we jump into the unknown, we discover that we have wings. That we can fly. That I can be more than I ever even imagined myself to be. That what I feared the most gave me the greatest gift. The gift of my God awareness. The awareness of my own divinity. What a gift. So let's rest in that awareness for a few minutes. The awareness of the divine that you are, that is calling you in your life to become more. So I invite you to become aware of your body, to become aware of hearing as you gently open your eyes, to become aware of seeing this world around you, and knowing that whoever you think you are, In reality, you're more, much more. And so life is calling in 1,000 ways, calling you to evolve. And for this wonderful experience of being together in this knowing, and for the teachings, for the unity movement, and for all of the ancient wisdom that we have available today. We are very grateful. We say thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. And amen. And amen.
The light of God I am surrounds me. The love of God I am enfolds me. The power of God I am protects me. The presence of God I am watches over me. Wherever I am, God is, and all is well. So anybody have any comments or questions for Robert? Just unmute and speak up.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, you mentioned a book, Illusions.
Yes.
By whom?
I think it's still in print. It's by Richard Bach, B-A-C-H.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's if you can get a copy, it's well worth. Easy read, short, but beautiful story. Beautiful.
Perfect.
Yeah, and
you.
Richard Bach also wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Right, yeah.
And his daughter, Christelle, was a member of our congregation for many years. And it was Christelle that partnered with me to kick our prayer chaplain program off. So every year when I do the prayer chaplain training that's coming up, I think of Christelle.
Neat. Circles coming back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is Aaliyah. I would like to say thank you also for that talk. It was perfect for me. The transition that I'm having to go through. And yeah, and I've been on definitely overwhelmed the last few days since I found out I had to move. I've been here for a while.
So you're not you don't have a choice in the matter. You've got to move.
No, my landlady is moving into the house I've been renting, and
Okay.
so I've told it I have to leave. But after your talk and when we were doing the meditation, I started feeling some twinges of excitement coming in.
Yeah.
Just wondering, well, I wonder what life has in store for me.
Exactly.
Because obviously there's something big. And we never know. It's, it could be some great unfolding happening. I'm trusting that it is going to be a great unfolding.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was last year, I have a woods right behind where I live, and I was watching this pair of hawks in a nest, and they had little hawklets. And as those hawklets grew, they would just kind of flutter a little bit around the tree. And mom and dad would always come and take care of them. And then one day, all of a sudden, mom and dad came back and chased them away. No longer brought food to them. It said that basically was saying, you go get a job or something. but you're a grown hawk now, and time for you to fly on your own, and to get your own food. And so animals, of course, that's instinctual. I don't know if animals feel the fear around that, but certainly there's an instinct to come back to that nest. And when something kicks you out of the nest, it's scary, but like the little hawklets, it forces you to strengthen your wings and learn to fly. And sometimes when we're learning, we bump into a few trees, or sometimes our wings don't keep us up in the air, and it's all part of the progress process too. So just recognize the universe is at work through you and through your life. And I hope you can trust it.
Thank you. And at times I feel a lot of trust. And,
Yeah.
and
And
then
it's okay to feel the
fear
fear
comes in because
Good.
I don't want to get caught up in the what appears on the outside that there's not much available in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
But because I do know that miracles happen all the time. And,
Yeah.
you know, and a friend reminded me that I do have good home karma from the past, you know, so.
Yeah, you'll be taken care of. And it's important not to get lost in the stories that the mind wants to make, because there again, we'll use any map that we have, even if it doesn't work anymore. So very often, you know, the mind, ego mind will say, well, if you do this, you know, you won't survive, and you know you're going to fail, and you'll be on the street corner begging, and blah 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 blah. You know, the mind just takes off with all of that, and it's like, nope, that's not true. It's just those thoughts are ways of trying to keep small, trying to stay in the nest.
Yes.
You know, so it's like fear. The two things that keep us in the ego identification are fear and guilt or shame. You know, when we break the old rules and go beyond who we are, we will feel either fear or shame. And so oftentimes we feel this sense of, well, I'll be an outsider, you know, I'll look funny. What will people think? You know, they may not love me anymore. So all of these fears, it's helpful to identify them and just recognize that those are ways that the ego tries to maintain itself. It tells you, you know, if you cross this ocean, you're going to fall off the end of the world. Well, or maybe you'll find a new world, but it doesn't tell you that. So anyway, I didn't want to preach a second sermon, but I did.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the analogy of the nest too, because that's perfect right now, because it has been a nest and a great sanctuary for me for the last 5 years. And
sure. And you can bless it and appreciate it and say goodbye to it. Maybe have a little ritual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate
You're welcome. You're on the end of the diving board right now, and
this is true. I'm not very good at high dives in the past, but that's the past.
That's the past, right? Exactly.
So Robert, I'm wondering, you know, with the big transition and change that we have coming up with my retirement, if you might say a few words about that as a minister who has left a few ministries in the past.
Well, I can speak to it from the minister's point of view, and I think it'd be helpful also to talk about it maybe from the church's point of view too. But basically, if you got a minute, when I was in this place of, if I leave, I won't have any way of economically surviving, because when I left my career, I had very little money in the bank and no retirement, and no Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. So I was really jumping into the void, and I just was holding on to my old career, and I was afraid to leave it. And then that night I had a dream, and in the dream I was with a friend of mine, and in the dream we would work in the city 40 hours a week, and then in the weekends we'd go down to the ocean, we'd walk into the water and we turned into dolphins.
Mm.
And we would swim and do loop-de-loops and go all around, just ecstasy. And then come back out, put our street clothes on, go back to work every Monday morning into the big city. And one time, weekend came, or the weekend was over. It was time to go back to work. And I told my friend, I says, you go ahead, but I'm not going. I'm going to stay here. I'm done with that old world. And she kept saying, well, what will I tell people? How do we get in touch with you? Where shall we send your mail? All of that stuff. And I said, I really don't care. I'm just going back where I belong. So I'm swimming then in the ocean all by myself and just feeling the bliss of it, the freedom of it. The next thing I know, the city was in the ocean. And I'm swimming around the ocean, but the city is there, and the people in the city were looking up at me as if they thought I was flying. And I knew that I was swimming. And they were going, how does he do that? I don't want to do that. How does he do that? And so that was the end of the dream. And it told me that if I follow my bliss, so to speak, and do like the dolphins do, just play and be free in the ocean, that everything regarding what needed to happen in the city would happen, but in ways that I never expected, and will seem very strange to other people, and so that when the city was into the ocean, it was like, wow, it was so different, because I was seeing things from my point of view, which is just being very natural and being myself. And the folks in the city were saying, wow, that's really bizarre. How does he do that? And so it's a lot like illusions, you let go of the bottom and you flow with the river. So it's a process. It's not perfect, but it's like it happens. And I never ever could have conceived my life after retirement, or after that retirement. Anyhow, that was one story. So I hope that's helpful. Yeah, that basically what I was told was just do what you love, and do it with passion, do it with heart, and whatever, I think there's a Ralph Waldo Emerson, he says, be true to yourself, and you will have the suffrage, or the attention of the entire world, So just that's the beauty of a story like Forrest Gump. Remember that, the movie Forrest Gump? It wasn't his mental ability. It was the fact that he was so authentic. He was totally and 100% authentically himself. He tried to impress no one, and people were drawn to that. He'd go for a run and they'd be running after him, and they'd say, "Are you running for world peace, or are you running for?" No, I'm just running. Why? Felt like running. So yeah, that just being totally, and this is no matter what we're doing, being totally authentically who we are. We're not used to that. We're used to playing off the mirrors, the outer world. And, but what does he think? What does he think? What does she think? What will they do? It's like, no. So, yeah, so anyway, I think that I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Robert. Anybody got any other questions before we go into our breakout rooms?
I've got one.
Yes.
Robert, I've been fascinated by intuition well, not my whole life, but for 40, 30 years. Anyway, and intuition and guidance and so forth. And I found that for many years, when there would be an intuition, a guidance of no, don't go that way, or not yet, go that way, but not now, that maybe because of, if I had a strict upbringing, maybe because of that, that would feel identical to a fear, but it wasn't a fear. It was a no, not now, or no, not that direction. And for a long time, I really struggled with how to tell the difference between a real fear and a guidance of no. That seems to have gone away recently. I don't know why, but maybe you could comment on that, on discerning the difference between those two.
Yeah, good question. Very good question. In my experience, fear, when fear is present, there's a tightening around the heart. There's tension in the body. You can feel the anxiety. There's the energy of shrinking. You know, fear is becoming very small. And as opposed to just saying no, which is usually shows up for me as just kind of a quiet inner knowing. So if there's anything that's packed with emotion, if there's anything where you feel in your body this tightening around the heart or the gut, or the feeling of fear emotionally, it's good to recognize that and to feel it, but not to act on it. And the guidance, in my experience, shows up in a very quiet and often unobtrusive way, and you know that it's right. You know, it's like when we meet someone that becomes our life partner or becomes a partner, or we develop, it's like you have this knowing, and it's like, yeah, this is right for me. And oftentimes, no, like you said, means not now. I find it's a little bit like if you ever played the game with a child where you hide something in a room, and then you put the kid in the center of the room, and you play hot and cold. You know, he'll move in one direction, and you say you're getting warmer, you're getting colder. You know that game?
Yeah.
That's kind of what our guidance is. Our guidance doesn't say, you know, walk from here across there. It just tells you one step at a time. So if you take a step, how does that feel? Well, if it feels like there's a lot of fear, well, what does that feel like? Maybe that's not the direction to go. Take another step. How does that feel? And each time we do that, check in and see, am I coming closer to the freedom that I'm looking for? Because it happens one step at a time. And, you know, if you were to ask me, how do you get to New York City from where you're at? I would say, well, every time you take a step closer to New York City, and you'll get there, guaranteed. So it happens sometimes in microscopic ways. And then we develop that internal intuition that knows and grows, and it grows when we begin to trust it. So I'd say the fear, if you feel fear, look at the fear. If you feel this gentle impulse, this gentle calling, you know, it's when I was called into ministry, it was like, wait a minute. It scared me when I thought about the implications of it, but the calling I could feel deep in my heart was very real. So there's the real calling, and then there's the apparent, the fear mind telling you what could happen. And then there's the third awareness, the self-awareness, which says, what's mine to do right now? So the guidance was, yes, go into ministry, but not now. Just keep going in the direction you're going, stay open. And when I did that, my life answered my questions. My life gave me feedback. And it became real clear that it was time for me to go. And sometimes what I'll do too is I'll say, Spirit, if this desire is from you, make it stronger. If it's not, then let's just take it away. So if I have an impulse to do something, I'll let it go, see if it comes back. Because if it's real guidance, it won't get lost. It'll keep coming back. And if you say yes to the guidance, then notice what fear shows up. Because there may not be any fear at the moment, but when you act on that guidance and take the next step, that's when the fear can often show up before you take that step. Listening to the heart.
Robert, I don't mean to ask you to repeat yourself if you've already
No.
explained this, because I think you have, but I'm going to say it anyway. What if that thing comes in the form of a profound loss, sudden profound loss? You have no control.
So the change is you're not going anywhere, but someone else left for whatever reason in some way. Okay, yeah. Well, there's grief, I would imagine. So it would be about recognizing the grief that you feel and how you were attached to the person or whatever it was that left. And cry your way through it, so to speak. And there may be fear in that when I look at the future, I can't live without what I once had. And that's not true. But when we're identified with the ego, it's going to tell us that. So if you're left bereft, let yourself do whatever grieving you need to do, but know that grieving is part of a process of healing, and that who you are is more than the grief. It's not all of you. It may feel very, very big, but you're bigger than the grief. That's really the bottom line. And then that you that's bigger than the grief will guide you when you're ready to whatever the next step is, or life may just unfold in such a way that it does. But let yourself take as much time as you need to feel the pain of the loss. It's part of the healing process. Is that helpful, Melissa?
Yeah, it really is. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
Okay, well, Robert will be back with us week after next, and you can, think of questions between now and then. And just again, thank you so much, Robert.
You're very welcome, Brendolyn, and thank you for the invitation. And I look forward to being with you 2 weeks.
Yep, 2 weeks from now. Yeah, week after next.